Hey, parents, welcome to another episode of the Modern Indian Parent Podcast, a podcast that is redefining parenting in Indian families. I'm Sanchita Daswani, a pediatric nutritionist, and every week we bring you episodes to help you own your modern parenting choices, even if Nani and Dadi don't agree with them. In today's episode, we are talking about a topic that a lot of parents struggle with, which is toddler tantrums. I remember for me, I really feel like the first few years, especially ages 1 to 3, I really struggled with my twins because I felt that there was this major disconnect. I felt that they were always angry at me, and I was never able to really understand why. And after actually taking the time to learn about toddlers, to learn about their tantrums, I was able to learn so much more about how their brain works, why they're acting out that way. And then having that knowledge helped me manage the situation so much better. And so to help us get through all our questions regarding this topic, we are joined with Dr. Ishina Sadana, who is a parenting coach with a PhD in human development, and she is also two-time TEDx speaker and author of the book Power to the Parent, which is a national bestseller. She runs her center under the name New Insights, where she conducts workshops for teachers and parents to help them overcome challenges and connect better with children. She herself is a mother to an 8-year-old and 1.5-year-old, and her own experiences about parenting adds practically to her knowledge. So let's welcome her on the podcast to discuss all about toddler tantrums. Welcome, Ishina, to the Modern Indian Parent Podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing very well. Just like every parent, I am managing kids and have somehow managed to be here. And I think it must be the same for you. So that's what's happening.
Yeah, every day there's something or the other that's going on. And that's actually exactly why we have you here on the podcast today. First of all, I'd just like to commend you on all the amazing work you're doing, because I think today for parents, it's such an overwhelming time. And having coaches like you to just help them feel that things are okay, you're not alone, and that there are things that we can do to help have a better relationship with our kids. And that's what we're here to talk about today on the podcast. So before we start, would love to know a little bit more about your journey into becoming a parenting coach.
So I really, really feel that I was destined to be in this field because I feel that connected and passionate about working in this field. But how it started was I was already studying about children in my master's. I did my master's in human development and childhood studies. That's where we had to observe children like for hours and then have a format where we have to fill our observations. And that's what got me interested into children's behavior. And then in my PhD, I did my PhD in human development. That's when I took the topic parent child relationships. And that was very interesting to understand how parents' behavior is affecting children's behavior. And while doing my PhD, I became a mom. Now, that was the main turning point for me because whatever I was learning in theory, I practically was started experiencing it, and I started understanding parents better because I was in their shoes. And whatever I was saying, be calm, I realized that, okay, it's easy to say, very difficult
Yeah.
to do. So that's how I started talking to parents for personal sessions. And during COVID, I started my Instagram handle and got a beautiful response. So many parents connected with me. And I think everything just kept happening. And here I am today.
Amazing. I feel that so many of us, our careers have come out of the fact that we, after having kids, we realized that there was this need and we need to support other moms. If we figured out something, we want everyone to know. That's also why I became a child nutritionist as well. And whenever parents talk to me about the toddler years, which is what we're here to talk about today, I do tell them that it was one of the toughest years for me raising my twins, because I really felt lost. I felt like they were just yelling at me and I didn't know what to do. And I remember I did this course called Big Little Feelings. And it was like, finally, I started to understand that they're not doing it purposely. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. And just to get started, could you just break it down for us? First of all, why do kids even have tantrums? Like, what is a tantrum?
Sanchita, what do you feel is a tantrum? When you are looking at your child behaving in that way, what do you feel is happening? Just one word, anything that comes to your mind.
Helpless.
Helpless. So they are
That's what I
feeling
feel.
something. They are feeling emotions. They are feeling helpless, frustrated, angry, upset, and are powerless. They are not getting what they want and they can't do anything about it. So these are emotions. Tantrums are behaviors which have a lot of emotions underneath. And you're talking about toddler tantrums. Let's talk about emotions in general. We are connect tantrums with toddlers. Every age group is having tantrums. Even we talk about adolescent tantrums. We talk about our tantrums. Aren't we throwing tantrums? Whenever we are feeling something, our behavior gets affected by it. When we are in a good mood, we are more patient with our children. When we are going through a hard time or feeling feelings just like our children, we will get more irritated. We'll be less patient with them. So our behavior will change and we can term it as tantrums. So actually, tantrums are nothing but emotions. One thing about tantrum is when we're looking at it, we are just looking at the behavior, how the person is acting. The feelings are not visible. That's why we tend to miss them. Sometimes parents say this also, whatever is happening in the house, I tend to just start yelling at my child because I can't do anything to anyone else. It's your feeling that's coming in your behavior. So we can call it adult tantrum. But with children, their brain is not equipped to handle these emotions. The filter that our brain is supposed to have so that we can change our behavior even when we are feeling upset. If there are some guests over our house, we'll somehow have a smile on our face. Even if we are feeling upset and someone calls, we will just change our tone and say, yeah, yeah, I'm listening. But we are very upset in that moment, but we have that filter. We will regulate ourselves. Our toddlers don't have it. So whatever our toddlers feel, it comes in their behavior as it is. That's why an adult behavior and a toddler behavior is different. The toddler is still going to be a toddler, even if there are guests around, even if you're in a shopping mall. Your behavior can change. So, tantrums are nothing but feelings. And if we see children in the light that they need our help because they do not have that equipment. When I call equipment, actually, I'm talking about the prefrontal cortex. So, but when I talk to parents, I feel when I talk in simple language, they understand better. So, I call it a filter. So,
Got it.
children need our help because they don't have the filter. And the thing about tantrum is when we look at a child throwing a tantrum, it's very unpleasant, Sanchita. So we also feel frustrated. We also feel these feelings. And when we don't use our regulatory fibers. When we are not regulating our behavior and we get angry or we get irritated with them, that's when we are not able to help a child throwing tantrum. The child needs help. The child is communicating that, I mean, I don't know what's happening in my body. My body is vibrating, and this is how my behavior is coming out. I'm really scared, and I hope you'll understand that I need your help right now. And that's how the child is communicating through the tantrum. That's what the child is communicating through the tantrum.
Right, because it's basically they're feeling a certain way. They don't know how to handle it. So they're hitting, banging, screaming, shouting. And when us as parents, we see that. Now we've heard a lot about gentle parenting, and there's this whole thing about a calm parent is a calm child. So I want to ask you, for so many of us, we did not grow up this way. So we are used to, okay, there's a tantrum. Either we get slapped or we're like, forget it or move on. So when we suddenly now are a parent and we see our kids screaming, we know the right thing is to be calm, to just be composed, but we really struggle with that. So I know that even you've mentioned it's really a lot about how we handle the situation. So when we see our kid in that situation, we understand why it's happening. But what is the first step we should do as parents to help in this our kid in the situation when we are also struggling sometimes?
When we look at a child's behavior, we also feel a lot of feelings. But as you said, that when we were children, we were shut down when we were throwing tantrums. So we are not trained or we were not taught how to handle our feelings. We become so uncomfortable with our children's big feelings, mostly because our big feelings were not handled in that way. We were made to shut down. So we are uncomfortable not only around the children's feelings, we are uncomfortable around our own feelings. We don't even know how to understand it. People do not even know that they are reacting because they're feeling something. That connection also, we are not realizing it. So that's what is happening. So when you ask the first step, when you look at your child, I'm not telling you to be right away calm. It is not possible. Not possible for me also. When I look at my child, there's so many things happening. It's very difficult to calm yourself. So the first thing is to just see your body. Just pause. That instant reaction that's going to come, that's what we can pause. So before, sometimes I will just say, Savi, please don't. And I'll just stop because I know that's coming like that. Let's be practical. That we cannot right away be like, okay, my child is throwing a tantrum, I need to be calm. No, there are a lot of feelings that we have. When we say validate your child's feeling, actually, we first need to validate our own feelings. Okay, I'm feeling very frustrated right now. My child is crying like this, and this is not making me feel good. Let me just breathe. Can we talk to ourselves inside our head like that? Instead of thinking that, why is my child behaving like this? See, I'm doing so much for my child. I'm trying to be gentle also. Still, my child is not understanding. The whole day I was around my child and still my child is behaving like this. Or I have so much work to do and right now I'm doing all this when there's so much work piled up for me. When you're going to keep thinking like that, definitely you're going to not be calm. You're going to get irritated. So the first thing is to just pause and see how's your body feeling and start breathing and calming yourself down because it takes work.
Yeah, I think that's our immediate reaction to just be like, oh my God. And I was reading this book. It's my favorite book right now, Let Them by Mel Robbins. And she has a sentence there where she says that most adults are 8-year-olds trapped in an adult body. And that is because none of us have had that time to feel our emotions and kind of go through therapy or have that time. So for us parents, it is hard as well. But I appreciate the fact that you're saying for us to accept that, acknowledge it, but then what are we going to do next that will make that difference? So I think that is a very important step. And I want to ask because there's so many scenarios, because as you said, we can tell everyone, stay calm, relax, but when it actually happens, we cannot do that. So I want to go through some situations with you. So for example, if your toddler is like, I want cake. And you're like, no, 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 we're not having cake now. It's lunchtime. And they start screaming. The amount of parents that have told me that they've had to give in at meal times or they can't get rid of the bottle because of the screaming. So again, as you said, it's the way they are letting their emotions out. So for parents who are dealing with kids who just scream when they want something, what are the steps they can do to help manage that situation?
The first thing is to get immune to the screaming. When I say immune in the sense, see, when a child is screaming and we start getting irritated, that screaming becomes very powerful. We are giving power to that behavior. Now, when we give that power, that means we just want to solve it. We just want the child to stop screaming at that moment. But if we get immune to it, then we can approach from a place of empathy and calm. So empathy and calm will look like, I know, you're the authority, Sanchita. You can be calm and still say no. Your child cannot make you give the cake. Toddlers, comparatively handling their tantrums is easy because you control a lot of things. For a teenager will go and take the cake. You can't say no after a point. With a toddler, you can just say that, I know you want it. You can stick to the boundary. You can let the child cry or scream and you do not explain too much. You do not tell them again and again, we can't cut the cake right now, or you've already had enough cake, or it's too sweet, this is not for you. Whatever you are telling, you have informed the child. The child is still screaming. The child still wants the cake. That information is not helping the child because the child is not using any logic right now. The child is feeling too many emotions. So logic is not reaching the child. What will reach the child? Connecting to that emotion that the child really wants it. So instead of explaining, we say, I know you want it. I know you really want it. And you empathize in that way. And you don't keep empathizing. Now, this is very important because when we tell parents to empathize, they think that till the time the child is shouting, they have to keep engaging with the child's shouting and tantrum. And and how do we engage now? Empathy. So they'll keep repeating, I know you really want it. I know you really, really want it. Oh, you wanted that cake. Come here. And you're doing it too much. And when you do too much, the tantrum increases because children take it as attention. Okay, so this behavior keeps giving me a lot of attention from the parent, even if it's empathy. So, a very important point is even when you're empathizing, you empathize for a couple of lines and then you have empathy in your body, Sanchita. It will look something like, and they're crying, they're screaming. You let it pass. Tantrums pass, Sanchita. They will pass. But sometimes toddlers, after 2-3 minutes, the way they will be, we will say things like, it doesn't seem like he was crying 5 minutes back. Look at him right now. I mean, they're so resilient. So tantrums always pass. We just need to let it pass while being calm, empathizing with the child, letting them scream, not even telling them not to scream. Because the minute you tell them not to scream, they scream more. because you're giving power to that behavior. They can see that it affects you. So we become immune. As I started this conversation, we let them scream, we let the tantrum pass without giving in, giving that piece of cake, without giving a very dramatic reaction, getting angry, irritated, anxious, just being the authority, being calm and saying, I know, but we still calm.
Right. So take a deep breath, pause, connect with your child, set a boundary that we're not getting the cake. And then I've heard this other thing which they say, then give your child two options, like something to look forward to. Like, we're not having the cake, but would you like to do this or this? So it kind of distracts them. Is that a good idea as well, to kind of redirect the thoughts?
If the child is in that state where they are, receiving what you are saying, there can be two kinds of tantrums. Either the child is all over the place, just screaming, screaming. Now, in order to talk to the child, you actually have to increase your volume. So, in a way, you're competing with a screaming child. Beta, I told you, don't behave like this. So, you're trying to get your voice across. It's like two children round now. Yeah, we have to look like the adults. So, in case you think that statement of, okay, let's do this now, we are trying to distract the child, and trust me, only toddlers get distracted, and even they don't get distracted after a point. Chances are that whatever the child is feeling, we need to let it pass without giving the child what they want, and that is how they learn to take hard feelings also. So if you see, tantrums are very useful behaviors. Tantrums give us an opportunity to help children understand what are emotions. See, Sanchita, today we are so lucky, we have so many resources as parents, and one of the resources about teaching emotions are these EQ cards, in which we have, like, this is anger, this is frustration, this is worry, and we are trying to show the child, and we are trying to help the child become more emotionally intelligent. But more than the cards, it is when the child is feeling the emotion, that's our opportunity to help them learn about emotion. They can't learn about what is anger in theory only and looking at the picture. They are learning when they're feeling it, when they're experiencing it. And that's when we say, you're angry, bacha. You got angry right now. I know it's anger. Or maybe later when they're feeling better, if you're having the discussion, oh, you just got angry, beta. You were hungry. Hungry, baby, get angry. So they are understanding what they're feeling. So aren't there opportunities for us to help them understand what emotions are? Not only when children are angry, when you are angry, when you are upset, when you are having a difficult emotion, can you be more vocal and say, I think I got really angry and that's why I spoke like that and I just need to breathe. So we are helping children understand emotions.
That's really an important point you said, to identify the emotion they are feeling. So instead of just saying, I know you won the bottle, say you're feeling upset. I like that, because that is making that connection in real life as well. And, I think back in the day when it was our parents and grandparents, they actually neglected our emotions. And I think now we've reached, as parents, this other extreme where we are too into the emotions, or we're almost scared of our kids' emotions because we can't. Why is it that parents, and a lot of parents, they just are like, we cannot handle it. We're not able to handle our kids' emotions. Why are so many parents struggling?
See, again, it is what kind of connections were formed in us, in our brain, when we were children are guiding us today, Sanchita. So, as you said, because we were not taught how to handle our feelings, we were told, be quiet, you're a good child now, you're a good girl, now stop getting angry, you're a good girl, don't cry, you're a good girl. So, when a child cries in front of us, the same neuron connections are now, because they're guiding us, we get very uncomfortable. We say, be quiet, don't cry like that. So, we'll have to break that cycle. We'll have to look at that pattern. We'll have to observe ourselves, and we'll have to change that pattern. Another reason, Sanchita, is that we get good at what we practice. So mostly parents who are trying to change, they've already practiced a certain kind of response to the tantrum. It can be getting irritated, shouting, or getting too anxious, even giving in for that matter. So that is the response that will come automatically because they have practiced it. If you want to change that response, then you will have to pause and change it and start practicing a new response. You may feel that sometimes you are able to do it, sometimes you're not. That's okay. That is the process. So I'm not telling that every time your child throws a tantrum, you're like this calm person. No, let's be practical. Let's be real. You are in that process. Sometimes you will be calmer and sometimes you will start shouting and you will stop yourself. Sometimes you'll keep shouting and then you'll realize, oh God, what did I do? And maybe next time you will work on yourself and be better. So we are not going towards perfection. We are going towards growth. Am I able to work on myself? Am I able to see myself instead of blaming my child? See, he cries. See, every time he wants something, he start behaving like this. More than that, am I going inside and seeing how is my response affecting the child? So when you take that inward journey and validate your own emotions, you are able to validate your children's emotions also. So what are you talking inside your head?
Yeah, I've noticed this with myself because, as you said, we're not perfect. We all know about gentle parenting, we know about the things we need to do. But I still have moments where I just like end up yelling or I end up screaming. And then I'll come back and my kids will be like, "You're going to apologize now, right?" I'm like, "You guys know me already."
How old are
Because
they, Sanjita?
they're turning 7, now.
Okay.
But I'm like, guys, sorry, I had a moment. I was just feeling overwhelmed. And they're just looking at me and laughing because they're like, we know this happens to you a lot. But I think what has helped me handle these situations is that I've learned to be forgiving to myself as well and not being so hard to myself. And even just talking to you, I realize it's not even what your child does, right? It's how we respond and how we handle it. And I even say this for meal times. It's not if your child eats or not. It's the way you respond to the situation that is going to help them grow. And I think the reason it's become so hard is because we really have to work on ourselves and we have to undo all these years that we've gone through, right? So I'm sure even for your work, it's really a lot of coaching the parents and really helping them mentally.
Yes, yes. So when parents come to us or they come to me, they are mostly talking about the child. They want to fix the child. There's a problem with the child. That's the mindset that they have when they're sitting in front. But it is how we talk to the parent and we take them from a place of blaming the child to the place where they start reflecting themselves within themselves. That is the journey of a coaching process. See, when you so beautifully said that we are the ones who are reacting, our response matters. If you think about it, every parent is reacting differently in different situations. So when you talk about eating, one parent could be like, it's okay, she has not eaten, it's okay, she'll eat the next meal. Okay, I still have to go. Chalo, isko, just feed her something, give her 2 biscuits or something. Some parents will be very chilled out about it. And some parents will be like, no, you have to eat, and they get very stressed out about it. Why are these two parents acting differently in the same situation? It is because we all carry different triggers. Some things may trigger you more, some things may not trigger you. Some people will be like, it's okay if he doesn't eat, I'm fine with it. He had something, but he has to study. He has to perform. He has to do that well. When he does not do that, that bothers me. Or some parent maybe it's okay. He does not study. He's not eating. It's okay. And see, children, I have to give space to my child. But manners are very important. You have to respect adults. What triggers me the most is when my child is disrespectful. So you will see that every parent is looking at these same situations in a different way. Why? Because every parent has had different experiences. Those connections are different. As a child, they have experienced these things. So that is what is affecting us. So we again have to go inside and see, why is this bothering me? Why do I, when I sit with my child to make him study, I know that if I'm not going to be calm or if I'm going to get angry like this and shout, my child will lose interest in studies. It's going to form such a negative association. I have learned that. Even then, knowing this also, why is it that when I sit with my child, my body becomes like this and I start shouting? Why? That why is important to ask yourself, Sanchita. That's the first step towards taking that inner journey. And that's what we help parents do in that coaching process.
Yeah, it's so eye-opening. I feel like for me, my trigger will be like when my kids like they don't eat, right? Because then I'm like, I'm a child nutritionist. My kids should be eating
Yeah.
perfectly. So then that triggers me, and then I'll make a comment to my kids like, guys, this is not working with my job. And I joke about it now because I realize that it doesn't have to be perfect. But yeah, exactly. We all have our own triggers. And I want to talk about a few more situations. So a lot of times, okay, kids will be on the floor, they'll be screaming, and we handle that as you discuss. But what about when they start becoming a bit violent? So a lot of kids tend to hit or throw things. So at what point are we understanding? And at what point are we like, this is not safe?
Very, very good question. Because this will help me clarify that when I say empathize and let the tantrum pass, I does not mean, sorry, I do not mean that we are going to let the child hit or we are going to let the child throw things. So during a tantrum, Sanchita, we allow some behaviors. Why are we allowing some behaviors? Because the child is feeling some emotion. It's there in the body and it needs to get out of the body. And this is the way it will. Like even we tell adults also that when you're feeling emotions, just cry it out. If you're going to keep it inside you, it will build up. It will not help you. You need to let it out. Similarly, when a child is feeling these emotions, we have to let them cry, scream, even if they're lying down on the floor, and it is okay, okay, it is safe. You may be a parent who will be saying, "Beta, don't lie down like this. See, your clothes are getting dirty. See, there are ants." You're just trying to make the child not lie down. Now, these are behaviors that are not harming anyone, such. So, first step is to let children behave in certain ways that are not harming. Then we move towards behaviors that are harming. Why? Because when a child throws something that is breakable, and we can't allow the child to do that, or your child is hitting you, that is the time when we do correct the child. But when we are not correcting them at these places, when they're crying, when they're behaving like this, that's when this kind of correction is more effective. Are you able to get my point? So we don't want our words to lose value. Don't cry also, don't lie down also, don't hit also. Everything sounds same. So we need that clarity. So we say, okay, you want to cry? Okay, okay, I'm here. It's okay. You can take your time. I'm just folding clothes over here. You can come to me when you feel better or you want to come. So you keep you're not engaging with the tantrum the whole time. You're letting the child know that I'm here. You can come. I think you need some time. Most probably the child will come. Now that's what we are allowing. But if the child starts hitting you, we are firm, we are calm, and we are firm, very firm. And we say, hey, we can't hit better. And we do not hold their hands, Sanchita, not even a toddler's hand. Because when we hold their hands when they're hitting, we are using our own power. We are also, in a way, getting aggressive. Now, that's when they're also going to try and get more aggressive. They do this and they become, it's not going to look good. And so, in those situations, when a toddler is hitting you, I'm not telling you to let the toddler hit you, not at all. You can get up, you can step back physically and practically. That's what you can do. For example, my toddler hit me, he's in my laps and he hit me. I will just put my toddler down. I'll say, we can't hit, beta. I know you're upset, but we can't hit. And then he hits me again. I step back and I say, we still can't hit, bacha. If you're going to hit me, I'll have to step out of the room. Something like that. You have to give that boundary to them. Or if they're hitting, if they're picking something and they're throwing, if you can, if it's possible, just go to the child in that moment. Just go and just, you'll have to be very fast and just say, okay, we are not going to throw this. I think you're very upset, but you need mama's help. You need mama. You don't want this, beta. You don't want to. I'll help you. And we very firmly, a firm hand and an angry hand, the energy is very different. I wish I could show you through this, but a firm hand will be like, okay, I'm taking it. Okay, I know. So we do put the boundary where it's required, definitely.
And when it comes to like whining, so like a lot of kids, okay, for hitting, we know that's not okay. And then as they get older and they talk more, they start complaining a lot. So like for example, yesterday my kids were fighting about which side of the bed to sleep on. And finally I was like, if you guys, and they started like attacking each other, and I was like, guys, I'm gonna do two chits and you have to choose. And then obviously one of them started crying and whining and it's like it's not fair. So I was just letting the emotions happen. But then after a point, I'm like, but this is the fact. You have to deal with it. And you guys, I think we're okay, we're good. And then after a few minutes, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like I've been too nice for too long. And then I want to hold a boundary in that way. But because how do you suggest for parents who have kids who are really like whiny and they're just like they keep going on and they just don't let things go? I know you mentioned they can get over tantrums fast, but some kids really drag it on. How do we stay patient in those matters?
Sanchita, we do not always have to be like when we call gentle parenting. That's very misleading, actually. We do not always have to be like, I know, beta, it is okay, bacha, you're upset, you're whining, okay, come here, you're feeling upset. I know you're. This is not how we are always speaking. We are very firm. We are the authority also, Sanchita. And when we keep doing this, actually, we are prolonging the tantrum more. So we have to, like I said, one, we have to give them space and stop engaging. When we stop engaging with the tantrum, we get some time to breathe also, Sanchita. So both, for example, one of them is crying because they wanted to sleep on the other side of the bed and they're crying. What are you doing? You said, I know you want it, but that's how the decision is. And then still they're complaining, whining. And then you're like, okay, you take your time to process this. It's okay. I'm here only. I'll just go to my room and I'll just fix my bed by then. Okay. So, in your own emotional control, while you're firm and you say that this behavior, whatever. So you're not engaging with the behavior. You give them space. Sometimes you can use words like, okay, beta, I think I understand what you're feeling. And I've already told you this is how it is. So I'm going to stop talking now because I think you just need to cry. So you just say that I'm done, beta. So this is how you are talking. You're very firm. You let it be. Or you can say that, beta, I think this is getting too much for me. I mean, you're crying so much that I'm not feeling good about it. I've already done this. So I'm going to take some time for myself also. You can come to my room when you feel better. For a 7-year-old, that would be a statement. So you have to be kind to yourself. You have to look at
Yeah.
yourself. Okay, it's getting too much. Can someone else take over? Okay, you can tell your husband to take over, but you have to be kind to yourself. So when you say how much, only as much as you can.
Yeah, it's important for us as parents to also take a step back when we feel that we have had too much of the situation, and that's okay. That's what you're saying, which is nice to hear.
Of course.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And speaking about bedtime, one major concern so many parents have as the kids get older, they do not want to go to bed. They will push it every day. I tell my kids, you need 10 hours of sleep, you need to you'll grow taller. All these things we tell them, you need to restore your body, you need energy. They don't care. So, bedtime routines, pushing bedtime, I want to ask you, how can parents navigate when kids do not want to go to bed?
First thing, as children are growing, they are going to want to be awake in late hours. They are going to push that boundary. What we can do is give them more time. Start speaking a little early. Just let them give them a heads up. That's a very normal advice. Just in half an hour. So if you think that they start arguing with you, you start early so that you have time for all that drama to happen, so that you're not stressed out looking at the clock. So that's one practical thing to do. Second, just say again what is the interaction between you and your children when you're telling them to sleep. Are you again and again saying that we need 10 hours of sleep, like you said? We are getting late now. You're not looking at the clock now. I'm telling you again and again, change your clothes, change your clothes. So this becomes a pattern. We need to break that pattern. Sanchita, we need to be more firm and connected are the words that I will use. How are we firm and connected? We make it fun. Because otherwise, whatever pattern you have created, it is repeating every day. It's not getting easier. Bedtime struggles are increasing. We need to change something in order to make it easier. So we make it fun. It can be like, okay, let's see who's going to change first. Or sometimes even if they're not listening, instead of repeating it again and again, just going to them and just saying that, hey, you need a minute. What are you doing? You're still going to change. I've taken out your night suit, helping them. They are just going to, and sometimes even having a boundary, something like, for example, with my child, the boundary that I've kept is that if we are going to be in bed by 9:30, then we are going to enjoy a book. I will tell you a story. We are going to read a book. But if we cross 9:30, then we do not have any time left for the book because we have to go to school tomorrow. So what we are going to, what and how I'm going to encourage my child to follow this boundary is my words will be like, not that if you're going to not be in bed by 9:30, we are not reading any book. No, I'm not talking like that. I'm talking, I want to read the book, Savi. Let's just hurry up. You still have 5 minutes. I know you can do it. My book is ready and we can do it. So I have to be more encouraging, positive form. There have been times when he is not in bed by 9:30 and then we don't read the book. And then there is a tantrum, which I have to experience that tantrum fully, completely, and let it pass without reading the book. But when I do that, the next day he takes my boundary seriously. So if you keep such a boundary, you follow through that boundary. So a boundary, connection, changing what you're speaking, change something, Sanchita. Don't use the same lines. Don't use the same words. You'll get the same reaction.
Do you think that a lot of tantrums, sometimes the underlying cause is that there's this cry for attention? Could that be a reason that tantrums happen?
It could be, especially if they think that this behavior gets me attention. See, I believe that tantrums actually happen because of emotions and feelings. It is when children realize that when I cry, behave like this, I whine, I get like this. This is when the parent gives me attention or everyone start giving me attention. So it goes to that direction, but it does not start from there. And children are
Understood.
not manipulating us for attention or getting what they want. They are also learning about us. They're understanding us. They're looking, okay, when I do this, mama will look at me. So, for example, my elder one is 9 years old, my younger one is 2 years old. So, whenever I also feel, Sanchita, that when I'm not looking at them, my elder one will especially do something to the younger one so that I look and I say, please don't do that. What are you doing? because he needs that attention from me. So if I just give that attention just like that, and I give attention to positive behaviors more. So if I'll be like, hey, did you just do that for him? Did you just pick him like that just because he was struggling? Oh, that was so sweet. So if I'm going to pay attention to positive behaviors, he will start indulging in that. He will start repeating that for attention. What are we? I mean, giving attention to is important.
Yeah, because that's also they're learning how we are responding to situations, and that's what they are remembering. Because I see so many times at meal times, babies will scream and cry, and they're throwing a lot of tantrums. And I also tell parents that have you realized that meal times is the time that you're spending the most time with your child because you're sitting in front staring at them for 45 minutes, giving them everything so they eat. So they are learning that I scream, I cry, my mom's going to come in, she's going to sit with me and give me that attention. So I've realized during these years that our kids just need that, and I know you brought this word up a lot, but that connection. And that also at times can help them realize that, as you said, that's how they're learning about life. And I feel sometimes that lack of connection, or only when they're having a tantrum we give them connection, sometimes it helps them kind of, I mean, it makes them have more tantrums.
Very, very well put, Sanchita. Very well put. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to ask you now about there are some kids because, and I'm sure parents who have more than one kid, they realize this. Some kids, they're okay. They'll have their tantrums, but they're fine. But there are those kids who are such strong willed children that no matter what you do, they need their way and they will not, what's that word? Yeah, they will not budge. And I'm sure you work with a lot of parents who have a lot of strong willed children. Parents who are struggling today with kids who have such a strong identity, which I also feel is a beautiful thing in a way because they are very clear, they're vocal on what they want, what they need. What advice would you give for parents who have a very strong willed child?
See, when you say a strong willed child, in basic sense, it means that the parent is not able to control the child's behavior. Like we are able to control other children's behavior, this child is not allowing us to control. Actually, we can't control any child. We cannot control any child's behavior. Children are deciding how they will behave. So, strong willed children just give that message out very clear to us. If we can't control, then what do we do? How can we work on with them? We can only influence their behavior, Sanjay. Influence means that when we tell them to do something, they say yes, they cooperate, right? We need that influence. And we get that influence through connection. So the answer to your question is with a strong willed child, your connection is going to be your energy force in the relationship. If your child is, and what I mean by connection is not love, because love is there. Every parent loves the child. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about connection, which means when the child feels good about the relationship that they share with us. Plus, when they feel good about themselves around us. How does your child feel around you, about himself or herself? And you know how that happens? How we are interacting, that matters. If you're constantly correcting your child, if you're constantly getting irritated, losing your patience with your child, if most of the times you are just instructing, please don't do this, now it's time to do that, no, we cannot behave like, we are explaining, lecturing, all these behaviors. Scolding is everything is pretty obvious, but even explaining, lecturing, sometimes parents say, I try to explain to my child in such a nice way, in such a loving way, but still explanations are explanations. I say that explanation, when we are explaining children, we are saying that you need to understand, you understand. But when we are empathizing with children, we say that I understand you. It is such a subtle difference, but it makes all the difference actually. Strong willed children, when they will feel good about themselves, they are going to cooperate more with you. Every child wants to cooperate. Like we want a beautiful relationship with our children want it too. Go under their behavior. What are they feeling? What is happening? Have clear boundaries. Do not shift your boundaries. When you say something, follow through, because these strong willed children are understanding that if you're actually going to follow through, they will stop taking you seriously if you'll not follow through. Then they are going to test you more. So connect with them. Have more positive interactions with them. Make them feel good about themselves. Respect them.
So I'll give you an example so we can tie this in. So if you have a child, for example, he's like, I don't want to go for this class today. I have no interest. I don't want to go. I don't like it. And you're on a time thing. You've already paid for the class, and this is a strong-willed child in front of you. Can you give us a practical way of how to handle this situation where we're firm, but we're also empathizing with the child?
See, when the child says that I don't want to go, Sometimes, I'll be very honest, sometimes children are just saying it also. That means some with my own child, if I tell him, for example, 4 o'clock he has his class, and around 3 o'clock I'll just say we have the class also in an hour, Pita, and he will say, I will not go. I don't want to go. So to those parents, ignore that. Ignore. Don't say anything. Just you can either just say that I know you will go. That is it. Don't get into an argument. The child is again testing you. They want you to react. And when you react, you give that statement power, and then it may become a struggle. So sometimes, if you will just ignore it, this you can only do when you have the time, when you're reminding the child, or the child comes back from school, and the first thing they say, "Aaj main class nahi jaunga. I will not go to class today." Ignore. They've just come back from school. They're tired, exhausted. That's why they're saying this. Most probably, when the time will come, they will go. So that's really, really a big tip that I have learned through my experience as well and other parents' experiences. The second thing that you do, now the time has come. Now you don't have the time. The clock is ticking. That's when you become firm and you say, we still have to go. But while you are putting that boundary, Sanchita, it is so important to keep going under the behavior. Going under the behavior means, why is the child not wanting to go? Is there actually something happening in the class? Is the teacher actually, what is happening with the teacher? What is happening with the children? Has the child been going uh, till now, but now the child is telling not to go? So it is very important that we are alert even while we are telling the child to go. So we can say, you find it boring. What's happening? You don't want to go because it's boring. Of course it's boring, beta. You have to study over there. Sometimes it is boring, but we still have to go. We still have to go, beta. No, I don't want to go. I know, but we still go. We will go and you will go. I know you will go. I just help you. So as much as possible, or maybe just breaking that conversation and saying, let's leave this. Come to me. Just give me a hug. I think you need a hug. And you give that connection for 2 minutes. So you're not getting irritated and you're trying to help the child. Another thing about strong willed children I told was connection, right? Another thing is that before you are starting to instruct for the class, what was your interaction before that? So when your child, for example, came from school and you have 2, 3 hours before the child goes for the class. Now, in those 2 hours, what were you doing? Were you instructing, eat your food? See, again, you're not finishing your food. Ita, please take your plate. Why don't you take your plate in the kitchen? Change your uniform. What are you doing? You still did not keep the uniform. What about the homework? Will you? So if you will see that by the time the study time has come, where is the connection? We need influence over the behavior. I cannot control my child. I cannot make my child or drag my child to go to that class. My child has to take the decision to cooperate with me and go to the class. So what do I need? I need influence. Influence that I get through connection. So if you need that cooperation, work on that connection. As simple as, Sanchita, if I have to go to a birthday party or I have to go to a wedding where I know there will be so many people, my son, I need influence over my son, because I'll have to say, we can't eat this, beta, don't do this, beta. I will have to give these instructions over there. So what I'll do is, before going to the wedding, I'll make sure that I'm having good positive interactions. My relationship is good, so that when I try to talk to my child listens. And I'm not saying that, why are you wearing this? We don't have to wear this to the wedding, or these kind of topics I will try and avoid. So can you understand that connection will give us cooperation? So we are also aware about that, because by the time that comes, that will help us. Now, in those moments, the last thing that we can do is we can put a consequence. A consequence can be as simple, because you can see that there is no other reason. The child is just testing me. Of course, studies are hard, boring, and the child does not want to do it, but we still have to make the child do it and all that. You can see that that's the only reason. Then you put the boundary and you can just say that, see, I can't make you go to the class. You will have to go to the class yourself. But if you will not be going to the class, then we will not be enjoying that TV time. Because, beta, when we do our work, then we have fun. Like I do my work and then I enjoy some time with you, and or I will be on my phone or do something. Similarly, this class is your work, and then you will be able to watch that TV. And I want to give you that TV. I don't want to take away that TV. So can you just help me out here, and can you just leave for the class? You will see that when you're going to put the boundary by being firm, not getting angry, but being clear about it, and the child has experienced that when you say something, you do it. Again, that's also important. If you are a parent who does not follow through, if they have experienced that when I come back or when I don't go for the class, even then I tend to get it, they will not take you seriously. So you make sure of that also. So a lot of background work is there, Sanchita. It's that moment is important, but what about the connection? What about following through the boundaries? What about that? And what about going under the behavior? The child has been saying this for 1 week. Every day he's fighting and then he's going. That means 1 week, what is happening in the class? Why is the child not going? So all that is very, very important. With that, Using a consequence, you can really help the child go to the class. I hope that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah, I know because there's a lot of kids, sometimes they'll be like, I don't want to go to school. And then you realize it's a pattern. But I think for us, instead of getting frustrated, it's about doing that back work and spending time with them to understand what's going on, what can we change in the routine, how to make it better for them. But then also still being firm that they have to go to school, but that you're there to support them in this journey of going to school and having all these experiences. The last part I want to talk to you about is just a mention about the elders in the family. So obviously, a lot of them are stepping up and understanding that we want to do things differently as modern parents, but a lot of people still live with their in-laws and elders, so they come across a lot of situations when it comes to, for example, tantrums, because a lot of them don't understand this. Oh, wait, why aren't you just giving them a slap
Giving
because
them.
that's what they did? Or how are you so understanding? Or when it comes to sweets, just give them sugar, do all of this. And also screen time. I think most children are on their dadi and dadu's phone and they're enjoying that. Why is it that the elders are not able to understand how we want things done? And what advice would you give to parents who are struggling with this battle to explain to the in laws, to the elders in the family, that we want to do things differently and it is actually for the best for our kids?
Again, a very beautiful question, Sanchita. For joint families or when you're living with a lot of people, one thing that we need to remember is some things we control and some things we don't control in our family. If we are going to keep gripping inside our head or even outside verbally that I'm not able to control it. See, my child is watching so much screen because Dadu gives the phone. See, this is what is happening. Every time I'm not home, they eat chocolates. If you're going to keep thinking like that, then you will not be able to focus on what you actually control. And we do control a lot of things. So, for example, my child watches TV with Dadi in the evening. Now, what do I control? I control maybe starting a class at that time for my child, which is fun for him, so that he's away from screens. Another thing that I control is maybe because I do allow my child 45 minutes of screen time, I can make that his screen time. Okay, fine, go watch TV with Dadi. I also get some time for myself and I do something for myself. So you can work around these things, but you will only be able to see these solutions when you are going to come out of that complaining and victim mindset. That's really important. Another thing is, again, you need the grandparents' cooperation. For that, again, like I talked about connection and influence over children, actually, connection is a theory that is applicable in any relationship. So, if you want more cooperation from the grandparents, you will have to talk to them in a way where you're not pointing fingers or blaming them. Please don't give him so much sweets. See, his teeth are getting spoiled. He's eating it every day. In a way, you're blaming the grandparent that because you're giving, that's why it's happening. He's watching too much screen. Aapka hi phone le leta hai. He watches it on your phone every time. Again, you are blaming. But if you're going to talk to the grandparent, keeping the child at the center, your child is the focus. Both the grandparent and you love the child. And when you talk to the grandparents in that way that, he has got 3 cavities. I did not even realize. I went to the dentist and they are telling me that he's eating too many sweets. And I think sometimes you give, sometimes I give. So we are trying to not blame. So, but let's try. And what can we do about this? Or do you think we can have some rules? So be in their team together so that they can cooperate with you instead of saying that we don't give. I only gave last week. They'll start defending themselves otherwise. If you need their cooperation, you need to have that influence. So, how is your relationship with them? Also matters when you're talking about children like that. Those are the two main things that come to me. One last thing that comes to my mind, Sanchita, is that there will be times you won't be able to control that moment. For example, that sweet that we're talking about. Maybe the grandparents are there, the child got a sweet. You don't want the child to have the sweet. So you're telling the child, no, we'll have it after dinner, not right now. And you're the grandparents, it's okay, dinner may be time, let him have that. Now, most probably in that moment, the child will eat the sweet because the grandparents will open that packet. Now, who becomes the bad guy? You become the bad guy in that situation. Now, the child is also saying, my mama did not want me to enjoy something I really wanted, but my grandparents wanted. So, whose influence is increasing over the child? The grandparents. The grandparents are becoming the good guys. So, in situations, in such situations, especially, we have to be smart. We know that the child is going to have the chocolate. So, even if I say no, it is not going to change anything. The child is still having. So I might as well say, come, I'll open the chocolate. For example, I say, Vita, but we still have to have dinner. And practically in that situation, the grandparents say, so what? It's okay, let him have. And my mind will tell me, I've been here before. He's definitely going to have it. And I'll say, oh, you really want to have it? Come, I'll just open it for you. At least you become the good guy. So next time when you say no to that chocolate, you might just be more effective in that boundary because you are not only negative, you're going according to the situation. So these are the three things that come to my mind.
Yeah, like choose your battles. You're not going to win that one. So just at least give it and make it like put it in your advantage, right? For the future.
Yeah.
And you know what's going to happen. And even the first point you said, I really appreciated that because I remember like my kids in the morning, because I'm not a morning person. So they'll go out and they'll be with their dadi. And obviously she'll be on her phone. So they'll take it. And I used to first get very frustrated. Like, why are they taking her phone? But then I realized because I'm not in control. So now what I do is I'm like, guys, let's choose worksheets for tomorrow morning and I'll make sure those worksheets are there. So when they wake up, that redirection is there. So you're right. We have to be smart sometimes and
We
make
have to
these
be.
plans, right? Yeah, no, amazing. So honestly, this has been so insightful and really, really great. And thank you so much for being here. I feel like everyone who listened to this will really feel at ease, calm, have that confidence that they can handle those tantrums and know it's not their fault and it is actually part of life and it's normal for our kids to go through it. And thank you for all your tips. I'm already thinking of different situations and how I'm going to handle them differently. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sanchita. Thank you. I just hope one thing that after watching this podcast, parents stop getting scared of tantrums. We are very scared. Oh my God, my child is crying. Let's just understand that this is part of their development and children cry. We just have to handle it in the right way. And let's go from there. These are opportunities to make children more emotionally intelligent. So remember that. Thank you so much for having me. It has been wonderful.